Today let's break down the L-sit to shoulder stand position. Now I'm limited by the ceiling, but if I drop down the rings, I can get into a straight body shoulder stand. Now you do have to be a little bit careful if you're going to start going super close to the floor and get into a straight position, especially if you start to go over and you don't have anything to stop you. But I'm going to go through how to deal with those scenarios, how to make it nice and safe and controlled. Now the L-sit to shoulder stand is one of those really cool exercises that carry over to lots of skills. On P-bars we use it for learning that L-sit to handstand. And on rings, it's one of the progressions towards the ring forward roll. Now this video is more about learning it on the rings, but we just need to make sure that we have the foundations in place on the bars before we take it onto the rings. There's a few things that become very, very important very quickly because of the instability of the ring that you don't have on the P-bars. So you need to sort of base the training on the bars to be correct, so when you go across to the rings, it's going to make it much easier. And the main thing we need to focus on is the contact between the upper arm and the torso. But let's just quickly run through the basics on the bars. So I would first learn it like this. So I'd make sure that you can get into this safe tuck position. Now, ideally, it would be a little bit more steeper. We don't want to have it vertical because you'll fall over, because your head and shoulders are in front of your hands and below, you're going to fall forward. So you need to have an angle of the body like this. So the shoulder stand position is angled. Now that angle is dependent on the distance your shoulders are from your hands. So if I have my shoulders further away, it's going to be less steep. If I have my shoulders closer to my hands, it's going to be more steep. But when learning the position, we definitely don't want to fall over in that direction. So having a flatter angle, making sure you have that contact between the upper arm and the torso, and you keep your body very one segment, and it's not kicking about all over the place, it's going to make it much easier to learn, and you're less likely to scare yourself and have a fall. So once we've got that comfortable tucked shoulder stand position, then we're just going to roll around to our L-sit position, and then ideally build the confidence and strength so we can get back again. But you use the eccentric, the shoulder stand to the L-sit, to build the strength, build the confidence, build the understanding of the movement, get someone to spot you if need be, and then you keep progressing that until you open the position out, both from the L-sit point of view and the shoulder stand itself. You can play around with more straight body entries and exits, and I'd highly recommend that everyone who's training calisthenics does that movement. So once we're very comfortable on the P-bars and we want to move it over to the rings, we need to get that positioning correct so it carries over nicely. So now notice what I've done with the P-bars, I've angled them out. If your P-bars are fixed, you won't be able to do this, but think about bringing the elbows in to try and create that external rotation. So external rotation to get the elbows to get very, very close to the torso position. So if you notice now when I go into the shoulder stand, see how my arms are pushed into my side. So we don't want to get into like elbow lever position, but we definitely want to have contact here. And this external rotation movement when we're on the rings, because it can be dynamic because we can move it, is how we're going to balance the position even if it gets sketchy. So once we've got comfortable with that contact, that connection between the arms and the torso, and be able to go in and out of the position, we're ready to start playing on the rings. Now the setup is going to be very different for everyone. I'm limited by the ceiling height, but I'm lucky to have this high attachment point, meaning that I can maximize these bars work as well. I could take this all the way up to about here. So that would give me a similar setup to this. But if I had the luxury of higher rings, I'd be setting the rings up somewhere around this height or a little bit higher to just give me a little bit more clearance underneath the rings for exiting. But whatever your setup is, I'd recommend that you first have a go at just coming through the rings down to the floor, because that's the worst that's going to happen, is that you go over and go through the rings and fall through, and you just want to do that with some sort of control. You don't want to smash your feet into the floor. Now I'm assuming if you're up to the level of working shoulder stands on the rings that you already have a very strong support position, so this position here, and also an L-sit. It doesn't necessarily have to have straight legs because that could be flexibility, but we just want to have a strong support position that we can hang out in, and then we can start looking at the shoulder stand. Now the big difference between the shoulder stand on the bars and on the rings is when I'm learning it on the bars, I would learn the eccentric. So starting the shoulder stand position, I'd go through to the L-sit. When we're on the rings, we normally have to start in the L-sit and take our body above, because we don't have the luxury of being able to climb into the shoulder stand, because you have to take the rings very close to the floor. So we want to be thinking about going from an L-sit position, so tucked in, to a shoulder stand. Now notice what I'm doing now is I'm extending the legs down towards the floor. That's not how I teach it on the P-bars. Ideally, we want to keep the body as one segment as it goes around. However, when we're learning it on the rings, we want some safety there. So what I'm doing is I'm going from a tuck, shoulder stand position, extending the legs down. My torso is now in the right position, but my legs are left behind like an anchor. And then I'm going to come back again. Now I just need to get nice and comfortable with that. Now when I go into that position, I'm practicing that external rotation. So I start on that L-sit, come through, legs stay behind, but now I've got a very good connection between my arms and my torso, so I'm nice and snug in that position. And then when that's comfortable, we can do exactly the same thing, go from the tuck position, but now I'm going to stay in more of a one segment, and I've taken my legs with me. So now hip to shoulder, heel to butt stays exactly the same on the transition down and on the transition back up. So my body's moving as one piece. We don't want that wobbly body. We need everything to be nice and tight and move as one piece. So the shoulder and the hip are talking to each other. And these are the things that you should be practicing on the P-bars to perfect, and it's going to make it so much easier on the rings. Then we can just look at increasing our hold times in the position. So I can hold in the L-sit. I can start to progress it. So I can take the legs out, can come back into my tuck, go through to my shoulder stand, hold there. Now again, I can progress it. Now notice when I progress that I'm taking the legs out in line with the torso. What I'm not doing is taking the legs up or backwards behind me, because that's going to change the line, the window of balance. And if I go up with my feet, it's going to take me in that direction. And if I go that way with my feet, it's going to pull me down. So I need that line to be exactly the same on the torso and the legs. And then I can play with straightening out the transitions. So if I have an L-sit here, maybe I go into like a semi-tuck position, hold that. Now that stays as one piece as I come through to my shoulder stand. I could extend out, back to that sort of in-between position, but it's still one segment, come forwards and through to the L-sit again. Now, one thing you'll start to notice on the transitions there, when I move between a more of an open position, if my legs are more open as I go this way, I also have to take the shoulders forwards of the hands to counterbalance the legs sticking out further. The more I'm into a tuck, the more the shoulders come into a ball as well, and everything becomes closer to that center point that I spin around. If the legs extend, the shoulders need to come away. So watch two things as I do these transitions. Watch the distance the shoulder moves depending on where the legs are, but also notice what I'm doing with the rings. I'm moving, so that external rotation to take me forwards, bring the arms even more into my side. And then I'll also use this type of movement to help me balance by the shoulders coming forwards and backwards. Very similar to what I use in the handstand, when I use the shoulders to dictate the position of the legs or the rest of the body, and also to be a really big underbalanced controller, which means that I don't lose balance. It might get ugly, but I survive. And then once I catch the balance, I can tidy it back up again. So standard tuck position, through to standard tuck shoulder stand, opening out in line with that torso. Now I come down to a semi position, shoulders come forwards, back to that semi tuck position, and then I can extend. I can move the hands around as I transition. Now look, I've done a little bit of a different transition there that needs me to change the shoulder position. I don't know if you noticed that. What I've done there is I brought the hips up first, kept the legs straight, then I extended the legs, which is different to move around in that semi-tuck position. And those longer legs need a higher torso position when they're down here. So when I'm in this pikey position, like this, my hips need to be higher, but as they come up, my hips have to come forwards and my shoulders also have to move forwards to try and find that balance. So it's always subtle movement as I'm going through those transitions to hold in the middle of the balance. If I don't get it right, I fall back down or I fall over. And you'll see that much better from the side if I exaggerate that. So straight legs but hinged at the hip, come through to the shoulder stand, but the hip has to be higher because the legs, and then as I open, the hips come forwards and I move the shoulders a little bit, externally rotate the hands. See, I'm going out in front a bit more to try and find the balance in that position. And then I can come down, hip comes up to counterbalance the feet, come through to straight position. So that's very different than keeping the body in that one piece, moving it around. Or what's very different again is if we keep progressing it and keep nearly a straight body, I say nearly because it's tricky for me to do it, and go from a support straight body position all the way through the shoulder stand. Now I might hit this with my feet, so I'm gonna have to turn the other way around. It's a little bit delayed, I think, there, but you see how the body's now staying more as one piece as I come round. That's pretty tricky. But But you can definitely see how the shoulders need to come really far forwards as the legs scoop around this way and then come back in at the right timing to counterbalance each other. So lots of variations to explore with that one. If you're not up to the level of doing them on the rings yet, definitely check out the P-bar version, or you can do them on the steps or boxes, work exactly the same. You just have to watch the clearance. If you're on a low box to come through to that shoulder stand position, it can be extended up and then back down, through again. You can do the straight body variations as well. You just need 2 high boxes. So it doesn't matter the calisthenic skills you're working towards. If it's just transitions for yoga, if you're working towards a muscle up, if you're working towards press to handstand, I definitely work that L-sit to shoulder stand. I think it's amazing. And it's a hidden part of a lot of the calisthenic skills you're working towards. If you're after coaching, check out my app and my website, link down in the description, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Thanks, guys.